Hi everyone. This part of the presentation shows the conversation between me and the AI Gemini. I will answer the specific questions from the assignment by looking at how well the AI performed. I will check if the AI's answers agree with what we studied in modules 1 through 3. I will also look at the references it used to see if they are cited correctly and accurately. Finally, I will explain my own thoughts on how AI might change the future of schools and learning. To get the best results, I asked Gemini to act as an expert in distance education. As you can see in the screenshot, I gave the AI very clear instructions. I asked it to specifically use the ABA style for its citations, for example, and to provide a full list of sources at the end. My questions focused on three main areas: the difference between distance learning and the sudden changes caused by COVID 19, how we use technology today, and the educational theories that explained how we learned during the pandemic. For the first question, Gemini explained that planning is the biggest difference. Distance education is a system that is built carefully over many months. However, the emergency remote instruction we used during COVID 19 was a quick reaction to a crisis. Gemini noted that while distance education is a choice made by a school to improve learning, the remote teaching during the pandemic was simply a necessity to keep classes going. It used sources like Boskert and Sharma to show that moving a class to Zoom quickly is not the same as a well designed online course. When I asked about the current state of education, Gemini focused on the integration model. It explained that 100% distance education is usually done entirely remote or away from a physical campus. However, the hybrid or flexi models we use now try to combine the best parts of the physical classroom with digital tools. Gemini pointed out that these new models are meant to be permanent. They're designed to make schools more flexible and ready for any future problems, which is a major change from the temporary fixes used in 2020. Question items 1 and 2 compare distance education with emergency remote instruction and with post COVID hybrid learning. I agree with the answers because they correctly highlight the key differences. First, distance education, as explained by Moore and Kearsley, is planned and designed for remote learning with structured materials and support systems. In contrast, emergency remote instruction, defined by Hodges, was a temporary and reactive response during the COVID 19 pandemic, often lacking full instructional design. Second, post COVID hybrid learning is different from distance education because it integrates online and face to face learning rather than being fully remote, as noted by Bates. It focuses on flexibility and improved learning experience. Overall, the key difference is not just technology, but design, purpose, and how learning is delivered. I asked Gemini as a cognitive partner to identify the theoretical underpinnings that may be applicable to the kind of teaching and learning done during the pandemic. Gemini used transactional distance theory to explain that distance in a classroom is not just about miles, it is about how well the teacher and the student communicate. If the communication is low, the distance feels larger. It also mentioned the community of inquiry framework. This theory says that for deep learning to happen, Students need to feel real online, and the teacher must be very active in organizing the lessons. The AI correctly noted that many teachers struggled with this because they were not trained for it. Gemini continued by discussing connectivism and self regulated learning. Connectivism describes learning as a process of making connections through digital networks and the internet. Gemini also explained that self regulated learning, which is the ability of a student to manage their own study time, was very important during the pandemic. It noted a readiness gap, meaning students who were not used to studying on their own found it very difficult when they were no longer in a physical classroom. You can also see the start of the source lists the AI created in this slide. On this next slide, we see the list of references continued. I checked these sources to make sure they were real and formatted correctly. The AI followed the APA 7th edition rules well, citing important experts like Moore and Siemens. While AI can sometimes make mistakes with references, these are accurate and match our course lessons. This project shows that if you give an AI clear instructions, it can be a very helpful tool for summarizing difficult ideas, as long as the human user checks the work for mistakes. I agree with Gemini's response because it correctly identified that planning is a major difference between distance education and emergency remote instruction. Distance education is planned according to Moore and Kersley, while ERI is a reaction to a problem or crisis. Gemini was also able to identify the core difference between distance education and hybrid or flexi. Distance education is separation based, while hybrid flexi learning is integration based. Gemini was also able to point out that distance education has lower teacher learner interaction compared to a hybrid or flexi that can still have high and continuous teacher learner interaction. In my final slide, let me explore the potential role and impact of generative AI. As you can see in the potential role column on the left, I view Gen AI as a powerful cognitive assistant. Its first role is to simplify complex ideas. If a student is stuck in a difficult text or theory, for example, the AI can act as an explainer tool, breaking down the theory into easier language. Its second role is to increase dialogue, where a student can have a real conversation with the AI 24/7, reducing that transactional distance. And finally, it supports learner autonomy, a central theory from Module 4. It gives students the freedom and the tools to manage their own learning, moving the education system toward the vision Wedemeyer described in 1973. Now, when we look at the impact on the right of the table, the role of the teacher must change. A teacher is no longer the sole source of content. They take in the role of a facilitator, guiding students not just to get answers from the AI, but to think critically about them. The ultimate impact is a shift to a resilient, permanent system. By integrating Gen AI, we are not replacing human interaction. We are using a powerful form of media to make sure that no matter where the student is, they always have a pathway to successful, independent learning. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for watching.